Okay, we put this out because it's this time of year that most of us are gawping. Well, Christine and I have been looking at endless piles of runner beans. Courgettes have been a bit of a pest, but not quite as much. And there are apples everywhere, etc. And also those tomatoes that are going to ripen properly have ripened, and I've got a heap of green tomatoes as well. So it's partially to talk about this business of how we can preserve food, because one of the things I've had no success with, I've had great success this year with growing cabbages, but no success whatsoever with the preserving the damn things. I don't seem to be able to conquer the art of fermentation. Christine, we've had the beginning of using drying means to actually get dried herbs. And this year, having looked at the bill for seeds last year, I've also started picking off dead heads and things in the hopes of maybe cutting that bill down a bit next year. I thought what we'd do tonight is maybe start off with a couple of people who volunteered to talk to us, just to give us a short intro to their particular area of interest. And then that we'd throw it open to everyone. So if you've got a good idea or something that a method you use to preserve or things you preserve that you really like, we'd welcome the recipe and the ideas for doing it. If, on the other hand, you're like me, confronting the heap and thinking, oh my God, what do I do with this? You can ask other people for their ideas as well. So I think we'll start off with Rowan, who's been working on the seed library.
Hi everyone, nice to see you. I know I've met some of you before, but if not, I'm Rowan Lear, and I, like you said, work on the seed library. So this year I think it's our first proper harvest year in a way. The seed library is only a couple of years old. And we've obviously all lived through a pandemic, so it was a little tricky last year to really work on getting seeds deposited. But this year it's been really fruitful harvest. So to explain, like, we have a seed library, which is a kind of cabinet in a central location where people can deposit their seeds. I've been spending today making an inventory of what we've got at the moment, and they're all kind of packaged in jars like this. And they're labeled. And from this kind of cabinet, people can borrow seeds. They can also request them online, and we can deliver them to people. And they can also bring seeds back and deposit them. We're also, at the same time, we've been growing some plants for seeds at Lamb Hill Stables this year. So that's North Glasgow. So we've had some crop from that. I've also been growing in a field in Perthshire randomly. So my dad has a kind of space on a cooperative farm in Perthshire, and the way that he grows trees, and in the middle of those trees there's kind of this empty space. So I've been using that space. Last year I grew peas, and this year I've been growing beans. So it's kind of I guess you call that field scale or something like that. So it's on a kind of much larger scale than what people maybe be able to do in Glasgow. But that kind of ensures we have a lot of beans this year for next year. So yeah, I guess we'd obviously love to hear questions and comments or ideas as well around the seed library. This year we've been kind of gathering the harvest, not just from the stuff we've been growing ourselves, but we ran an event at Woodlands Community 2 weeks ago, where people could bring seeds. We're doing another similar event at Rumpus Room, which is in Govan Hill, again, where people can bring seeds. So for example, you could bring whole bean pods and pea pods, you could bring tomatoes, you could bring cucumbers, courgettes, or gourds. You could basically bring the seeds in a kind of unprocessed form, and then we would together kind of process them, separate the chaff and do things like that. So it's kind of making it more of a collective gesture, collective moment of harvest, which I think we've been missing a little bit over the last year. So that's been really nice to have these sort of social moments to come together and harvest the seed and sort the seed. And we'll continue to be doing that. I think we're going to do a session at Govanhill Baths and a session with, it's basically at the Brigate, so city centre, during COP26. So there's going to be various moments to share seeds and collect the seed together. And I guess I'd also say, I know that seed's quite expensive, but we have a surplus of some seeds. You know, when people do manage to save seed, we have a lot. And, you know, you kind of want to use it quite quickly within a couple of years. So yeah, I'm obviously very happy to supply people with seeds. I know that most allotments will have maybe a group, I don't know, we call it like a group seed catalogue order that goes in. But if there's other things you're looking for, yeah, please do take a look at the seed library. Yeah, maybe I should stop there, but yeah, feel free to ask more questions and all the things I've forgotten to say.
Okay. Any questions for Rowan? Could you put your sound on? Thanks.
I'm a member of Macaulay Allotments, but I hadn't heard of the Glasgow Seed Library. If I just missed, does it just pass me by?
It's relatively new. It's was only set up like about 2 years ago, and it was set up kind of between CCA, the Centre for Contemporary Art, and Glasgow Community Food Network. Sorry, I forgot their name. Glasgow Community Food Network. So I guess they were the two main networks that we first just reached. And the seed library's kind of been running without much of a, you know, it wasn't funded to begin with. It was just a kind of project that was happening. Since then, we've like gotten a little bit of funding, so we've been running workshops and kind of other events. And I guess that in that way, because we've been working in specific communities, like with Lamb Hill Stables, kind of people who live around there, and like various other places, Woodlands and Govanhill Baths. So I guess like we've been reaching people like steadily like that. But I think the allotment forum, like Judy and Jenny have both been very supportive. So I think we have been shared in some newsletters and things. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know how much we're connected in with the allotment groups.
We've got a sort of subgroup that's called the Sustainability Committee, you know, subgroup. So they would certainly be interested in encouraging our members to save seeds and donate to you. We do it in a small way between ourselves, but
yeah,
it would be a good project to support.
Yeah, if you'd like me to pop in to like, if you're having a meeting or anything specifically for that group, I'd love to pop in. Or
yeah, we're just having Zoom meetings at the moment.
That's absolutely fine by me.
Yes, I'll bear it in mind. Thank you, Rowan.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting. Maybe there's something we can put on our website, Rowan, from you, that we could put out on Facebook as well and advertise it around. Because I'm sure there'll be quite a lot of people who'll be interested. I'll switch over. We'll come back to you for other questions later, I think. I'll switch over now to Sheena. Welcome, Sheena.
Thank you.
Are you in Glasgow as well?
Yes, I'm in the West End of Glasgow.
Right, okay.
The main reason I started looking at fermented foods was really for the gut health side of things rather than the storage of excess produce from the allotment. So the main thing that I tend to do all the time is milk kefir. So I don't know if many people have heard about it, but you can now buy it in the supermarket. But you get white sort of grains, and you put those into milk, and then it thickens up the milk, and then you just sort of drain the milk off. So that's the main thing I do. And I started buying various books. This was probably the first one I bought. And then it had a recipe about sauerkraut in it. And it was like purple sauerkraut. So it was, but you can use normal green cabbage, but you grate beetroot into the recipe I used. And I found that very tasty. I think it is an acquired taste because I've given it to various friends and family members. And some people, you either love it or you hate it. All I do is sort of shred the cabbage, grate the beetroot, and then it's salt, juniper berries, and I think it was, what I'll do is I'll send Jenny the recipe. This was out of this book, but it's pretty straightforward doing the sauerkraut, but I tend to keep it in the fridge. So I suppose that defeats the purpose of storage, but it keeps for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the longer you keep it, the better it gets, I think.
What do you put it in, Sheena? Because they sell a lot of dead expensive crocks, don't they, for you to fill up?
They do.
Is that really necessary?
I put it in a Kilner jar, and what I did was, well, I mix it just in a big bowl to start with, and then I ram it into a Kilner jar with the end of my rolling pin. So you jam it in as tight as you can get the cabbage and the beetroot and all the other ingredients together, and as you compress it, water comes out of the vegetables, and that mixes with the salt, and so it causes a sort of briny solution. And you've got to make sure that that brine solution covers all the veg. And then what I tended to do is put one of those, like a glass ramekin at the top, and I squashed it down and then put the lid on the Kilner jar. But you need to open the Kilner jar every now and again to let it creates carbon dioxide, so you don't want the thing exploding. So every few days I opened it before I left this out on the kitchen counter. Once it's been fermented for about a few days, you can then put it in the fridge. I can't remember the exact number of days because it's a while since I've done it. Excuse me. And the kimchi is very similar. If you've got, I don't know if anybody's grown any pak choi, but that's a really good way of using up your pak choi. And you buy this Korean paste, which you can get in Sainsbury's down in Partick now. You used to have to go to the Chinese supermarket to get it, but it's widespread now. And that is really, really tasty if you like sort of spicy food. But you can make it as spicy as you like, or not spicy if you don't like it. So that was the two sort of vegetable ones I do. And then that led me on to buying this book. I don't know, can everyone see that one?
What is it? Culture?
The Culture Club.
Yeah.
The Cultured Club. And I think this lady is an Irish lady who's, I think her mother was her father was a chemistry teacher, and her mother was a domestic science teacher. So she sort of merged the chemistry with the cooking, and this is really a recipe book rather than talking about fermentation. So there's loads of different sauerkraut recipes in this. And there was another one, The Art of Fermentation. And then there's another one that I bought after that that's got more recipes in, is this one. But that's more a sort of reference book. I don't particularly like the recipes in this one. I prefer it in the other two. Oh, there's if you're really into sort of fermented foods, there's a really good resource called UK Fermenting Friends. It's a Facebook group. So you just join the group, and it's got loads of different files on how to make yogurt, kombucha, kefir, sauerkraut, sourdough, all sorts of things like that. It's probably one of the best resources you'll be able to, a free resource rather than having to buy all the books or take them out of the library.
Okay. Any questions for Sheena? Yes, Christine.
Talked about fermenting mostly leaves. Are there other vegetables you can ferment?
Oh, loads. Well, the one thing that doesn't ferment well is courgettes, sadly, but carrots are meant to be delicious. This book here has just about every vegetable you can think of.
Right.
So that's like from rhubarb to lemons, preserving, like rather than buying preserved lemons, onions, fennel, horseradish, ginger. There's all sorts in that one.
Right. Thank you.
I'm probably being very naive, but it suddenly occurred to me that we used to make lots of alcohol with, say, parsnips and potatoes and that. What's the difference between fermenting and alcohol? Or is alcohol just one strand in the fermentation process?
I think,
Alcohol's one strand, yeah, sorry.
yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a lactic fermentation, which is the one I think that happens with cabbages. Isn't it? Because it's an anaerobic. There's a different, it depends on the conditions you create. What I thought was quite difficult with doing the sauerkraut is you've got to keep the air off it. Otherwise you get the wrong fermentation. You
Yeah.
don't want the yeast to ferment, not the normal yeasts that you get in fruit and stuff and that would create alcohol. You want this lactic fermentation. So that packing things down is really the difficult thing I found, so that you actually squash all the air out as it begins, so that it's the right fermentation rather than the wrong one. That's why I think I found it quite tricky.
I think making sure there's enough liquid as well. That's like the salts and the vegetable juices, making sure that there's no air gets under, you know, I think that really helps as well.
Yeah, because when you start off, you haven't got much juice, have you? You have to keep squashing until the juice starts to flow out.
What they tell you to do is to get a big bowl, and you get all the veg and the salts, and you sprinkle it with, however, I think it's 2% out of memory of salt, and then you massage it into the veg, and then that starts and then you bash it with your rolling pin, and by the time you start to pack it into the kilner jars, you definitely have enough liquid
To push it down underneath, yeah.
Yeah. But some people use, such sterilized stones to weigh down the veg, but you need to get the veg. You don't want veg sticking up out of the water, because then you get the yeasts and things and bacteria you don't want.
No, it's a little like with some other things. How many people do pasteurization? Use that as a methodology. It's really where you can pack vegetables and things into glass jars of various sorts, kilner or ones you've collected off your shopping. But you put the jars up to their necks in boiling water with a trivet underneath, and bring them up to 70 degrees C and hold them at that for a good 30 minutes or so. And I found with elderflower cordial, which I really like, and I used to make it the way they recommended it, and then it often went off. You found you'd got a nasty little grey top knot on it. But I found that if I pasteurized it for time, it keeps fine for a year or more. And it was just that's another way of actually, so you put the jars in, you heat them up, you hold them at the temperature of 70 degrees, and then you screw down tight the lid and cool them off. But it is a way of killing the bugs before you seal them, so that maybe they will last longer, and it's not so essential to put them in the fridge as it is with some things.
So Jenny, is it like you heat the container?
No, you've got all the I'm using it because I make a lot of tomato and courgette and onion and garlic mixed together like a tomato sauce, that I'd empty over some spaghetti or something. And I make the sauce and I put it into the jar hot, and then put the jar in the water bath.
Right.
Yeah. and then hold it there for long enough and then screw it down. And that's one way of helping to keep it.
Because presumably you could do that with fruit, like, you know, all those black currants we've got. Do the same, heat up the black currants.
I think that might well work, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And make a kind of blackcurrant cordial.
Yeah.
I can only eat so many blackcurrant crumbles.
Yeah, that's what we used to do, though. We used to bottle. You know, sort of all the fruit was bottled. And that's essentially what we did, wasn't it?
I would think it would be, Judy. Yeah. I mean, I started off with it again, really to solve the elderflower problem, because
yeah, I mean, I can remember
back to it.
You know, my mother bringing jars of Kilner jars out of the oven, and I'm sure, you know, they used to be full of fruit because that's the way we kept our fruit right through the year.
Yeah, and do you have to add sugar to it or not?
I can't remember. I mean, this goes back to my childhood, Christine. Too many years ago. And I haven't done it myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth experimenting with, I think. I mean, the other obvious way of doing it is sort of making syrups, you know, cherries in syrup and things like that. That again, as you say, heat up your jars in the oven and add when hot, and then seal them down. Yeah.
And Jenny, sorry, I just asked in the chat, and I'm not sure if you saw it. It's just what did you mention a temperature that the mixture should reach?
It should be at 70 degrees C, so you do
Okay,
need a sort of jam thermometer thing to let you know.
Great.
But you don't have to take it up. The art is not to necessarily take it up to boiling for fruit, so you're not going as high as that.
Cool, thank you.
But yeah. Any other questions? Or anybody got something they really like that they store? The other one I think that I quite liked as well for courgettes is, has anybody else done the one where you grill them and put them into oil?
Is that a bit like confit?
I suppose it is the same idea as confit because it's sort of an oil soaking, but basically you get your courgette and slice it very thin the long way. Put those long pieces under the grill and just so they start to brown and toast, and then flip them over. And then you put them into oil along with garlic and lemon juice and a bit of lemon peel if you like. And thyme is usually mentioned in the recipes. And again, you know, you put it in a jar and hold it in that, but you don't have to go through. You do it with garlic, don't you, Chris?
I did. We had a bit of a disaster with the garlic this year, and they didn't grow into little cloves. They just remained in clumps, you know, one little clump. So I basically put it in olive oil for half an hour, and you had to keep it just beyond a boiling point. Now, my thermometer didn't go down that far, nor did my gas. So I had to keep taking it off. But it survived. Your jars, you've got a jar. I've still got a jar in the fridge. And actually what you do get is a nice garlic oil as well as the garlic in the confit. It was just all the odd little bits of garlic I had. You know, it was a way to use it because they weren't drying. They were beginning to rot because they hadn't properly formed. So it was just a way of using it. And that's lasted a couple of months, which is good. I use a lot of garlic.
Yeah.
Jenny, there's a question in the chat. I think it came up when you were still talking that says, would that be like the jarred peppers that you can buy from the supermarkets?
Probably some of them. I mean, some of them are in vinegary finish, aren't they? And some of them are in olive oil. So olive oil, that, as you were saying, Christine, sort of the confit idea of warm olive oil as a way of actually preserving vegetables and things is certainly used. It's particularly Mediterranean, so it's often used with Mediterranean veggies, but it does work, and it works really well.
There's another question here that says, so does that mean there's no need to seal as you would to ferment?
No, you don't need to seal as you would to ferment. You know, in that sense, it's well, it depends. I must have got it wrong when I tried the fermentation, but I found it really hard to get all the air out, because the problem is you pack it down and then you look at the jar and you can see these pockets of air squashed down in among the cabbage somewhere. You're trying to actually get that to come out. It is actually quite hard to make sure that that is really anaerobic, I found, but I might have been not squashing it hard enough or not enough weight on it afterwards, because there's the air goes in as well when you first put the cabbagic stuff in, and you've got to get the air out. So you do have to work at it a bit. I sort of was twiddling around the jar and seeing these little bubbles, and thinking, oh God, and then try and get that lot out. Yeah. But you don't need to do that with the olive oil. That will actually soak into the.
I think with the olive oil, I kind of make sure that there's the tiny little bits of garlic are still under the oil. They're not poking out, so they keep. But at the end of it, you also do have a nice flavored olive oil. Might try other things next year then.
Yeah. I mean, I found if you do the courgette slices like that, they're really nice on top of a pizza or something like that. Bit of lemon and garlic, you can't beat it really, can you? I don't think. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, kind of connecting to oil. We just ran a workshop on Saturday with Nadia Maloney, who makes these kind of herbal remedies, kind of quite simple, accessible herbal remedies. And one of the things we made with her was a calendula oil. So it was taking the flowers of the calendula, making sure they're fully dried. So I guess if you have a dehydrator, that would be extra helpful, or drying in the normal way. And then 3/4 filling a kind of kiln jar like this, and then just adding sunflower, kind of organic sunflower oil. And then I think leave that for 6 to 8 weeks. And when you were talking about poking out the air bubbles, that's what I was thinking about it, because we were doing that on Saturday.
Right.
Leave it 6 to 8 weeks, and then it becomes this kind of like super substance for using topically. So using on the skin, you can also use it as so apparently the yellow will come out of the calendula into the oil, so you end up with really bright yellow oil. And it can be used as a kind of base ingredient for a lot of other, like if you want to make a balm, or she mentioned a huge range of kind of ways you could use this. And it's not, we made it with calendula, but she was mentioning lots of other types of flour that you could use to make this. So yeah, that's definitely a way of using up your flour heads anyway.
Yeah. No, the other one I tried last year, but I forgot to do it after COVID. Was somebody said to me that they tried various cordials and most of them were nasty, but surprisingly that the top of nettles, young nettle heads, made a really good cordial. And I did try it, and it's intriguing. It comes out pink. So it's very similar to making elderflower cordial, where you soak the leaves or the flowers in, I'm trying to remember how you do it. You do it with hot water, don't you? With water. And you make a sort of lemonade as well. It's because in a way, elderflower cordial is sort of lemon mixed with the elderflower to give it the bite, etc. I'll have to look up the recipe. I can't remember, but anyway, the liquid comes out quite sort of pinkish, and it's I thought it was really good actually. I really enjoyed it because it's quite a sort of how would I say, grown up sort of taste. You know how some soft drinks are really rather sweet, etc., which I don't like that much, but it was surprisingly good. And I only remembered about it afterwards this year, which was annoying. I should have done it.
Oh, it was not. It was nice. It gave me a bottle of it. But you said the flowers, making cordial out of the flowers was awful.
Yes, because that was the other thing to do with it.
Out of dandelion flowers, they were. Was it?
That's right. Dandelion flowers were declared disgusting. You didn't
Be aware.
be aware. Avoid the dandelions.
Yeah.
I mean, what we can do is put up some of these recipes after this meeting, because it would be good to gather some of the things together, some of the different ideas. Hydrator was meant. Oh, hi. Yes, Scott.
Sorry, it was just while you were talking about fermenting things and trying to get the air bubbles out of them all, you reminded me of how I've seen videos of people do things like put all their summer clothes in a bag that you attach the hoover to, and then it sucks the air out and it compresses it down. You can toss it under your bed or at the back of the cupboard. And I thought, surely there must be something that someone's invented for a kitchen for this. And the closest that I found, I've put a link to in the chat here. It's called a fermentation weight. Is anybody else familiar with these already? Am I talking about things that are known? It looks like it's basically a big heavy glass disc that you put in the top of like a kilner jar that like Rowan was holding up. Those ones in that link there are actually flat, but some of them when I googled had handles on the top, so they're easy to pull back out again. And I guess they just squash it and keep it down, even if there's an air pocket at the top. At least everything within that mass would be squeezed a bit. So there's my contribution.
Can I pass on a warning about that? No, I haven't had one of those really proper weights, but I don't know if anyone's got one of those goo desserts that come in the glass jar. And I was like, oh, that's a perfect size for me to put in my kilner and squish down, which worked absolutely fine until I must have squished it too far at some point and like broke the glass, and obviously like shattered the glass, so ruined my, I don't even know what it was, maybe it was sauerkraut or something. But yeah, it was a sad moment. I think it also broke the jar, so it was a disaster. Multiple proportions. So be careful when you're using a glass weight to squish down your ferment.
Any other questions that we have not? Oh, hi. Yeah.
Can I ask if anybody's done things with nasturtium seeds as capers? Because they're really good. And as I remember, I did it a few years ago and I've still got them in vinegar, and they keep a long time. So again, it's pickling. And I pickle my pears and also my damsons. And again, you know, making up a spice pickle, a spice vinegar, and putting them in. It's very simple, but it does last, and they're really, really good.
Kirsten, you were going to say.
I have done the pickled nasturtium seeds before, but I was a little disappointed. I'd prefer capers. It's terrible. As an allotment, a grower of self-seeding nasturtiums every year. Actually, it was just the garlic thing really piqued my interest, this comfit garlic, because I went through a phase the same year that I did the nasturtium seeds. I also pickled a whole batch of garlic, and I did a kind of mixed brine with lots of bits of things that were left over, and then used that boiling method as well, which was quite a nice way of having, you know, like pickles that you could eat with a aperitif, like as if you were in a Greek taverna or something, you know. So that boiling method really worked well for that. But my problem with my garlic, I had a beautiful crop of garlic and I did loads of pickled garlic, but it all turned blue. And I've never figured out why the garlic, and it's happened. I make a chutney every year with whole cloves of garlic in it as well. And some years the garlic turns blue and some years it doesn't. And I'm always fascinated with what this bluing of the garlic, if anyone has the knowledge of what that is and whether it's a temperature thing or an acidic thing, or if I'm just getting something really wrong.
Somebody's saying that theirs went blue once.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not the only one, that's good.
No, no,
No,
somebody else has blue garlic.
my
Okay.
housemate ferments garlic, and we've definitely had a couple of like jars that have gone really, really blue. And I'm sure we must have Googled it, but I can't remember what we found out. I mean, we ate it anyway.
I ate it too, but I felt I did it for giving as gifts at Christmas, and I couldn't give
Oh
the
no.
jars of, you know, beautifully decorated jars of blue garlic. Didn't really look like a very
Oh, no.
appetizing
No,
story filler.
no, wouldn't go down. no.
So I ate quite a lot of it actually. It was fine, but it just looked horrible. I also recommend for the blackcurrant problem, I make loads, if I have a big glut, I always make loads of cordial with blackcurrants, and it's so popular with kids because you just tell them it's Ribena and they want to drink it. If you call it blackcurrant cordial, they don't, but if you call it Ribena, they do.
Maybe that's the answer.
So I
maybe-
label all my bottles with the word Ribena, and then my nephews and all the kids that come over to see my son all want to drink it because it's exotic Ribena. But I made creme de cassis one time too, and that was really delicious.
Right.
Better than a crumble.
Yes, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. What about the drying? How have people found that? How many people have used a dryer? Yeah, Sheena. What did you use it for? Oh, you need to turn
Sorry,
off.
I've unmuted. I've got a selection here. I've done some courgette discs, so they're pretty dry. But if you pop them in water, they go back to their original size. It's quite fascinating. And they're beetroot, mushrooms, carrots, and parsnips. And also the aubergines, they've come out very well. And oh, the reason I got it was I've got for apples as well. So I've done various dried bits of apple, and they, if you dip them in lemon juice before you dry them, they taste a bit like those Colin the caterpillars from Marks and Spencer's. So kids really like them. They're sort of a bit sort of tart and fizzy.
Right.
And I've also done, I haven't grown the oranges, obviously, but I was trying it with the oranges, and they're really, really nice. And they go quite well in a gin and tonic.
They're also used by some people, aren't they, on Christmas trees because they glitter.
Yeah, yeah.
Cut and sliced. Yeah, and they're dried. Yeah.
How do you make those? How do you dry them?
I bought this machine called, where's the book? It's over here. I walked it, so it's a massive thing, but you can get a smaller version. Can you see that?
Behind.
Yeah, behind me.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
It looks like a microwave.
yeah, and it's got a heating element on it. Sorry, it's got a fan and a timer, and you just turn it on. It takes quite a few hours. It comes with an instruction booklet as well. So I've only had it about 3 weeks, so I've been trying everything I can get my hands on to see what it's like.
I've got one. I used it for herbs this year. I was trying to make rosemary, sage, and thyme. I found I had to really manage it. Each of them took a slightly different length of time. And I also found that the herb setting was too light. I've got a setting that has herbs and then vegetables. And especially for the more solid herbs, I was having to put them on vegetables because it was still taking 12 hours.
Right.
But it seems to be worked out. The jar I gave you, Jenny, it seemed to be okay.
Yeah. look
I was
at-
worried about the sage. It seemed to curl a bit as if it was almost going off, but it seems okay. It doesn't smell, you know. But I think patience is the word with those dehydrators. They just take hours.
Right. I mean, I don't know what happens with drying seeds, Rowan, and how you go about that. We have
Yeah.
a lot of dried beans, and I just lay them out on an old carpet in the sitting room, leave them there until they're dried through. But with small seeds, it's a bit more difficult, and I wondered how you prepared them.
Yeah, drying's a big issue. And sadly, Judy sent a message about using a dryer, like a dehydrator or a dryer. And sadly, no. I was really hopeful that we would be able to use a dehydrator on its lowest setting, but I think the lowest settings tend to be 30 degrees, 30 or 35 degrees. It's too hot for seeds. You're going to start to damage the seed itself and reduce the chance of it being viable next year, which I mean, and I also still speak to a lot of people who are drying their seeds on radiators and things, which is just no, as long as the radiator is actually on, no, that's a very bad idea, which is it's a real shame because it makes it more difficult to dry seeds. So in general, just telling people to do like what you said, like spread them out, put them somewhere. If you've got a room that hasn't got a dryer in it, hasn't got moisture going on in it, you're not drying clothes in it, that's the best place to have it. It's difficult because you want air circulation, but you also don't want the kind of wet, moist air that's outside right now coming and circulating. That's the worst. So it's tricky. I can say from the seeds that we've been kind of taking into the library this autumn over the last couple of weeks, a lot of them will look visibly very dry, or some of them will look visibly very dry, and we'll pack them, and maybe you go to take them out the pot like the next day, and you can tell the seed envelopes, packets, paper, they feel damp, and you know that they're still really moist. So one of the things you can do to help that is I basically got some, I guess, white rice, baked it in the oven to make it even more dry, and then add that to like maybe you could have it in the bottom of your kilner jar with the packets, obviously, like of seeds in there, and that will absorb a lot of the moisture. We've also got some silica gel. We've now today we went through every jar and added silica gel, and added extra to when it's fresh, quite freshly added seeds. Yeah, freshly deposited seeds. But so I just saw, what would the ideal temperature for drying seeds be? I actually don't know for sure, but I just know that I really pushed. I was like, 30 sounds fine. Surely we can dry them at 30, and no, that's what I've been told. So I would assume it must be between 20 and 30, maybe about 25 degrees, 20 to 25 degrees. Most people say room temperature, but you're just struggling with moist air all the time, and that might be fine. If you're just saving your seeds and you're going to sow them right in a few months, your seeds. You will get mold and you will get kind of pathogens attacking the seeds, but it won't be so much that you won't get germination. I think because the seed library, we're trying to make these seeds last not as long as possible. It's not a seed bank, but at least a couple of years. And when we bring one seed into the cabinet, you're kind of endangering all the seeds if it's a wet seed. So we're trying to take time. So as an example, I had Sutherland kale seed, which I dried. It was growing in a polytunnel. I left it to dry on the plant in the polytunnel until it literally drooped and fell to the ground. But before the pods started to pop, at that point I cut it. Then I had it in kind of paper sacks, big paper sacks, and had it in a greenhouse. And that was probably for a month in the greenhouse. Then I brought them into my flat and laid them out. Kind of got a big table, laid them all out on the table, and it's quite a warm room, which doesn't have kind of anything else going. It's a spare room basically. And then they've been there another month, and now I'm kind of confident that they are going to be okay with a couple bags of silica or some rice. I think those seeds are okay. So that is a good few months. And a lot of people won't have a greenhouse maybe and won't have a polytunnel to do all those things in. I was lucky that I managed to use my parents for that. So it's tricky.
Ian, you've got a way of doing tomato seeds, haven't you? Because they're a bit difficult sometimes with the casing on them.
Yeah, but generally, for the tomato seeds, we normally put them in lukewarm water, very tepid water more than anything. Anything actually sinks is it's not viable. Anything actually floats to the top. The next morning, strain them off, put them on a paper towel. You at least know those ones are actually viable. So as anything that said it sank, chances are they're not, and that will get rid of all the pith and all the thinny off it. You've got to make sure that you actually do get all that off, as Rowan was saying, because after the thing, if you don't, that will go mouldy and you will have problems. Again, the silicone, I've always said to people, if you're buying new leather goods, new shoes or anything else, you will always find these wee packets of silicone in there. So yeah, keep a hold of them. I certainly keep all my seeds are in a tin, and I certainly keep silicone timmy in there as well, just to keep it dry.
Also, if you've been ordering COVID tests, the lateral flow tests always come with some silica, so save the silica.
Every cloud.
Yeah, I was going to say tomatoes actually a lot easier in a way, because once you get them out the water and they've lost their jelly envelope, they will dry quite happily, like in the sun, or if you're lucky enough to get some sun, but they'll dry very fast. I've been drying mine in coffee filters, but I think paper towel is fine, or kitchen towel, and they seem to be okay, to be honest. Again, like a bag of silica or some rice, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, the proof is that the right phrase? The proof is going to be in the pudding. We're going to see next year if we have a real knock on our germination rates of stuff that people have deposited. We know that we've not done a good enough job of getting the seeds dry, but it is going to take us a season, I guess, to work out how that's going. If we've done it right.
I was going to say, Rowan, I mean, obviously with a lot of the professional seed companies, they're actually using like tin foil packaging. But I mean, they've got to have them super dry, right? Because if you use tin foil wrapping on a seed that's not dry, that's just going to trap the moisture. It's going to, so that's going to be a difficult one.
Yeah, I've had a look. There's a really good video, I think it's online somewhere, of like real seeds set up for drying their seeds, and it is crazy. Like they have built an entire room with like a lot of machinery in it and special cladding on the walls to like make the driest conditions possible to dry their seeds, like, because obviously they're drying a lot of seed, and it's very impressive. And it has been suggested that we should do something like that at the seed library, and we don't have kind of infrastructure to do that yet.
No, rather specialist. Yeah. But well worth doing now, I think, because seeds are getting more expensive. I'm quite shocked by the time you've got the list to where you go. And the only difficulty I've found is with you have to watch it sometimes, because we've been drying beans, and what's happened is they've hybridized with other beans. So when I actually look at the dried beans, they're of very different sizes. So it's not always coming back true to what you originally started out on. But no, I'll have to put it up afterwards, as sort of pictures. My daughter has been drying beans as well, and she'd got some heritage breed that she bought, and they're really pretty. Some are black, some are white, and some are brown. And she says she doesn't know which comes from which plant or why. They just seem to come out in this rather nice looking mix. But she's been trying it as well, because I think exchanging seeds and spreading them about when they're getting on towards £2, £3 a packet, it's a real help. And maybe we can do more of it actually on the allotments if we get into that. I like the idea from Mary Lee of having a seed group who specialise in it, which sounds quite interesting. Okay. Well, it's 8 o'clock. Any last question before we wind up from anybody? I haven't missed anything. I don't think so.
I'll put the link to Rowan's earlier talk at GAF into the chat one more time in case anybody wants to follow up on some more of the details. A lot of people asked some deeper questions that I can imagine if we stayed here for another half an hour might come up after what we've heard here. So
Right.
if you want to go recap that, it's on that page in the chat.
Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll certainly try and take the references, and I'd be very grateful to anybody who's got a good recipe or a good wheeze. If you could maybe email it to us, and we'll put something together with the references, etc., for people to follow things up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming, and thank you very much for your input. And we'll look forward to seeing you again on some other occasion. Okay, thanks a lot.
Right,
Cheerio.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.